What's up, you guys? Coming back at you with another top 10 Commander video. This time we're going to take a look at the 10 best Planeswalkers in the Commander format. Now, if you're a stranger to my Commander videos, you know that I do prefer utility, versatility, and just overall flexibility in a card, regardless of its type. If it follows that criteria, I do tend to put it on my list more often than not. Cards that I do not put on my list are cards that are too situational, cards that are more or less just flashy rather than reliable. So let's get on to the honorable mentions here. First, I have the Magic Origins Flip Planeswalkers, all 5 of which are not on this list for a very similar reason. They take effort to flip, and once they do get into their Planeswalker forms, it's a bit underwhelming. I think the ones that do stand out are Liliana, Jace, and Nissa. Gideon and Chandra are just non-factors in this format, and all of which have a similar weakness. They just don't really seem to fit well in Planeswalker strategies, because you do have to put in the effort to actually flip them, and some of the strategies where you have to flip them are a little counterintuitive when you're playing a Super Friends deck, so it has that weakness. They do synergize well in decks that are more tribal oriented, like Liliana for zombies, Nissa for elves, and Jace for wizards. They do well in those decks. However, in Planeswalker themed decks, I don't really prefer playing these just because they take more effort. Then I have Vraska the Unseen, most well known for the fact that she can destroy non-creature permanents. That's her biggest upside. Her downside is pretty much everything else. Her plus isn't that good, and her plus is usually only really used so that you can use her minus more often, and that's about it. You're rarely ever going to care about the ult. Getting those 3/1/1 assassins might seem like a big deal, but they're rather easy to deal with, and most people are just going to be afraid of losing non-creature permanents rather than having to deal with 1/1 tokens. They don't even enter the battlefield with haste, so it's not like it's an immediate threat. Then we have Sorin Markov, another flashy Planeswalker. A lot of people are just afraid of him because of his minus. Being able to set an opponent's life total to 10 is kind of dickish, and a lot of people think that he's incredibly powerful because of that, which they're not wrong. You can pretty much vote a player out of the game like this very easily. However, in a multiplayer game, which this list is primarily meant to adhere to multiplayer Commander rather than dual Commander, his minus is really the only thing that you're going to use him for. His plus is weak, and his ult is a Mind Slaver, so it's powerful, but when you consider the fact that he's just going to hit the board most of the time just to minus, and he's immediately going to get hated out because no one else wants to get their life total down to 10. When you consider that, he's really not that powerful of a Planeswalker. He's usually just going to hate on one player in the game, and that's about it. He doesn't really serve any other purpose in that. If you're behind in the game, he's not going to do much. If you're ahead in the game, you're already ahead. What's the big deal in just setting them to 10? So he's sort of all or nothing, and he is more situational compared to a lot of the Planeswalkers that I like. And then I feel like I have to mention Liliana of the Veil and Jace the Mind Sculptor are not on this list, and I say that because a lot of people are probably going to ask me, well, why wouldn't you consider these? It is for the fact that in a multiplayer game, they're not in particularly powerful compared to the others. They're well known for other formats such as Modern and Legacy, but when you try to bring them to a multiplayer, a 4-player game, even bigger than that, suddenly they just don't have that much power. So let's get on to the actual list here. Number 10 is Xenagos the Reveler. Most creature-based decks in red and green are at least considering this guy. His plus is gotta be one of the best pluses out of all the Planeswalkers on this list here. Adding that much mana to your mana pool, which it is usually going to be a lot, pretty much guarantees that you can have a turn where you just go off and you go crazy. It allows you to play a bunch of big creatures. It allows you to play cards like Tooth and Nail pretty easily. Allows you to play Crater Hoofs pretty easily. Think of something like a Prosh Sky Raider of Care deck where you can easily fit this guy into. His downside, and it's the reason why he's only number 10, is the fact that he doesn't synergize well with other Planeswalker decks. And usually you want to have as many different places that you can put him, and I just don't really feel that he's as flexible as a lot of the other Planeswalkers on this list, but I feel that he's noteworthy. Nevertheless, his minus gets you a creature token, and his ult is incredible too. If you can plus enough, which you should be able to, put any number of creatures or land cards from the top 7 of your library onto the battlefield, which is, it pretty much is going to help you win the game. It's going to put you in a very good position at the very least. Number 9, I have Garrick Apex Predator, taking the spot away from Vraska. And the reason why I did that was because you just have 4 options here, all of which are very relevant. His plus is going to destroy target planeswalker. His other plus is going to get you 3/3 token with Death Touch. His -3 is going to destroy a creature. You gain a little life there. And his alt is going to give an emblem to an opponent where whenever a creature attacks him, that creature gets +5/+5 and trample. So all abilities are extremely relevant. And he's going to fit into a lot of decks in Golgari colors. Number 8 is Dak Faden. His plus gets you card draw, his minus gains control of an artifact, and his alt pretty much just allows you to gain control of whatever you want, so long as you can still keep it. So you have just incredible options here, and he's only 3 mana in Izzet colors. So he fits into a lot more decks than I think people give him credit for. He's a good control planeswalker. I think in Izzet colors, you don't have the best options for planeswalkers in Ral Zarek. I mean, that's about it. So having this dude, he's just awesome. I think Saheeli Rise also is it as well, but I think she's more or less just an artifact planeswalker here. And Dak Faden is just a great control option for planeswalkers in these colors. And you have these options whenever you can gain control of something permanently. The only downside is that it doesn't actually untap the artifact that you're gaining control of. Number 7 is Teferi Temporal Archmage. Now, out of all of the planeswalkers from Commander 2014, this guy is clearly the best, not just because he synergizes with other planeswalkers and being able to allow them to use their abilities anytime, but for the fact that his minus is also just incredibly powerful. It definitely has its own combos, mainly with the Chain Veil, but not even aside from that, there's a ton of artifacts that do tap for multiple mana, and being able to untap them and ensure yourself that you get a ton of mana, that's insanely powerful. His plus is basically sleight of hand, and his ult just pretty much just synergizes perfectly with Super Friends, and he is one of the best planeswalkers you can put in any Super Friends deck, in addition to just being an insane commander himself. Number 6, we have Venser the Sojourner. Now this guy is just crazy good. On the plus, you get to exile a permanent you own, and you get to return it to the battlefield at the end step. It allows you to manipulate ETB effects. It allows you to manipulate artifacts. You can have them enter the battlefield untapped. Same thing with lands as well if you're desperate. And the minus allows you to swing in uncontested with your creatures, which is always nice. Definitely some utility there in Brago decks. His ult is where it's at, man. His ult is known for being one of the most devastating if you get to pull it off. You get to exile a target permanent, which is just crazy. You should win if you get his ult off here. But he really synergizes well with the ETB decks, mainly being Brago, Rune of the Hidden Realm, being the 2 most noteworthy. But he's also useful in Super Friends decks as well, because you do get to exile your own planeswalkers. They enter the battlefield. You get to use their abilities again. Number 5 is Nicol Bolas Planeswalker, the original. Fortunately, the newer one didn't make this list. I just feel like he's not as much of a sure thing. Once you get this guy out, he does have that precision going for him, where his plus gets to destroy a non-creature permanent, which is great on a plus. I mean, that's one of the best pluses of any of the Planeswalkers ever. So, his minus allows you to gain control of a creature, which is never a bad thing. And his ult might as well win you the game as well. He deals 7 damage to a player. That player discards 7 cards, and then they sacrifice 7 permanents. So devastating. He's well known for just winning people games. If there is a downside to him at all, is the fact that he is in Grixis colors. It's being super restrictive to only Grixis decks and Super Friends decks. So he does have that disadvantage there. However, it may not be as big of a deal as you think it is. There are a ton of decks that are going to just play him regardless of whether or not he synergizes perfectly, because you don't need that much synergy. He is really just going to take the spot of a removal spell. He's going to take the spot of a win con. He's going to take the spot of a lot of things, and a lot of people are okay with that because he is a win con and he is a removal spell all in one, and he's very versatile that he could take control of creatures as well. Number 4 is Tezzeret the Seeker. This guy is an absolute beast in artifact decks, which are one of the most popular themes of any deck. So right there, he has an instant synergy with a ton of decks in this format, which, go figure, artifacts are one of the most popular themes to build a deck around in Commander. But his plus allows you to untap 2 target artifacts, which is absolute bonkers. He combos well with Teferi on the same list here. If you can get out the Chain Veil with him, you can go infinite that way as long as you have some artifacts to tap for mana as well. He can also minus to search up an artifact with CMC X or less, and he's a minus X there. So you can search up something like a Rings of Brighthearth and combo that way. Or you could plus him, wait, and then search up something like a Paradox Engine. Tutoring up artifacts and putting them onto the battlefield is never a bad thing. Having that on a minus is insane. It is one of the better minuses of any Planeswalker. And his ult, I would say, is the worst thing about him. And even that, it's pretty decent. You're just not going to typically go for this type of win in an artifact-based deck. You're more or less just looking to combo out and win that way. But having 5/5s, it's not bad. Number 3 is Elspeth Sun's Champion. Honestly, whenever I make a white deck, I always look for a spot for Sun's Champion here, because she is just insanely powerful. All of her abilities are good, all of them. Her plus, there's no doubt about it. 3/1/1 white soldier tokens on a plus. Synergizes with any deck you really need a reason for to get tokens out on a plus. That's insane. Most Planeswalker abilities just give you maybe 1 token at best. This gets you 3 on the plus. The minus is basically a board wipe effect for creatures that are going to be threats to Elspeth Sun's Champion. So you can get rid of threats there, which is always a good thing. Whenever you can get a Planeswalker and just automatically be able to protect yourself, that's crazy good. And on top of that, the ult is a win con, because you're usually going to be plussing to get to that win con. And when your creatures get +2/+2 and flying, and you're pooping out 3/1/1 tokens every turn, I mean, that's a ton of 3/3 flyers there. All of the abilities are relevant, and there are so many token decks, and there are so many decks that use her for control reasons. There's so many decks that use her for pillow fort reasons. There's so many decks that use her as a win con that it would be stupid to not even consider her as being one of the better options, because she definitely is. Number 2 is Karn Liberated. Now, this is very close to number 1 on this list, but the reason why I only have him as number 2 is because he is almost too precise. He doesn't really deal with all problems that you would want him to deal with. He can automatically just minus and exile whatever permanent's giving you problems, which is the best thing about him, and that's honestly why he's number 2 on this list. His plus is good hand disruption. If you use it wisely, can also be dead, but it's also just mainly used so that you can minus him more easily, or even get to his ult. But if you get to his ult, you're pretty much going to win the game, if not because you're actually getting stuff that's good off of the exile, mainly because people just don't want to play another game of Magic. So he's very powerful. He's good in control. He's good in a lot of decks. He gives you colorless removal, which I think people underestimate colorless removal. But he gives you that, and he also gives you exiling removal. So he's a definite answer for a lot of things in this format. You know me, I love precision and I love utility. So number 1 on this list for me is the best Planeswalker in the whole format. That is Ugin the Spirit Dragon, without a doubt. All abilities are insanely good. He probably has the biggest impact as soon as he gets onto the field. His plus is a lightning bolt, which that's never a bad thing whenever you can deal 3 damage to a creature or player. His minus is where it's at, minus X to exile all permanents. They're 1 or more colors. It's not going to deal with everything. It's going to leave alone artifacts and colorless creatures. But mainly this is going to deal with so many things that are causing you problems. It's easily the best thing about him. He instantly just shuts the game down. It puts you back in a winning situation. It helps you win the game, exiling so many permanents all at once. It's so devastating. It's going to put you in the best possible position to win. He's just insane like that. And his ult puts you in an incredible situation to win. Very similar to Nicol Bolas. but this time it's more or less just about drawing you cards, gaining you life, and getting you permanents from your hand onto the battlefield, which should put you in a very decent position to win. All of which are reasons why he's number 1 on this list. He's also flexible. He fits well into so many decks for control reasons. You don't need to necessarily synergize with Planeswalkers as long as you get the best possible abilities out of them. And every time I look at him, I can't really honestly say that there's another Planeswalker that is capable of solving the toughest situations in games better than Ugin. He gets around Indestructibles, he gets around Hexproofs, he gets around Shrouds, he gets around Protection, and he's capable of dealing with so many problems. So why wouldn't I put him as number 1? So anyway, guys, that was my list of the top 10 best Planeswalkers in the Commander format. Let me know what your 10 favorite are. Let me know if something didn't make the list. Anyway, guys, please subscribe if you have not already. I do a whole lot of other videos that you will definitely like. Void here, signing off. You all have a wonderful day.